Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. Looking forward to a really great session here. And we're going to be talking about AI governance. And has anybody heard about this fad? It's a fad, isn't it?
I think it's fashionable.
This whole AI, GenAI thing, fad. Yeah, kind of like the cloud and the internet and all that stuff. It'll go away eventually. So with that, you know, we've got a few session objectives here. We're going to be talking about the governance, and that'll be really the focus of our talk today. We'll be talking about understanding the CISO's role, which I know is very important for you all. And we'll be talking about how to recognize some of the shifting sands and how our risk and our attack surface is changing and what we should do about that. But before we get going, I thought we should give our backgrounds, huh? So let's do an introduction.
Yeah.
I'm James Christiansen. I'm a vice president at Netskope. About 25 years or a little bit over of leadership practitioner in security. Companies like Visa, first CISO for Visa, first global CISO for General Motors, Experian. You get the idea. It sounds like I can't keep a job for like 10 minutes, but that's over 30 years. So a lot of background also in IT, CIO, and I was founder and CEO of a software company that I then sold later. And Jim.
Thank you, James. James and I have known each other for many, many years
Yes.
as CISO. So I'm a former six-time CISO, financial services and healthcare. I also served on the board of the FS-ISAC and the healthcare ISAC for many, many years. I'm currently an advisor to a whole bunch of companies, and I teach cybersecurity at the Tannen School of Engineering at NYU. And I also mentor a whole bunch of cybersecurity leaders and CISOs. But mostly I try to play pickleball. So that's kind of my passion these days. We're both kind of at the stage in our career where we only work with people we like, present company included. We only do the kind of work that we like to do, and we only do that when we want to work. So that's kind of the equilibrium. The new definition of retirement, by the way, my parents told me that retirement, you know, is like you don't work, but this is really retirement, very fulfilling. You'll notice I look a lot more relaxed because I don't have to protect an enterprise 24/7, unlike all of you. So this is, you know, this is what you have to look forward to, kind of be aspirational. Now, I do also write papers, and I have a white paper on this subject, as a matter of fact.
Good.
And if you talk to anybody from Netskope, they'll give you a copy. Send me an email, I'll send you a copy. And I did it maybe 6 months ago. I already think it's out of date. I think I'm going to have to refresh it. So over to you, buddy.
Yeah, well, thanks. So by the way, he was so right. You know, being an operational CISO for so many years now, I'm not an operational CISO. I get to look at the other CISO that gets up at the middle of the night, and I just get to do the strategy kind of work. It's great, and my passion is golf. It's as frustrating, by the way, as being a CISO. You never win. It's always going to get the better of you. So we're going to talk today, you know, about this fad. It's hard to believe in just 2 years, right? GenAI hit the front page 2 years ago, just around 2 years ago. And what a difference it's made in our lives. What a difference it's made in the way we do business, the way, of course, we have to think about our attack vectors.
Yep.
And how many of you have seen the co-founder of LinkedIn? He did a video, a deep fake video, where he interviews himself during this video. Have you seen that? Yeah, it's amazing. It's incredible. So if you haven't seen it, drop me a note after, james.christiansen@netscope.com. I'll send it to you. It is absolutely fascinating. So we're going to be talking about how to do these, some of the where's it's grown, and the different compliance issues we're going to be running into.
So let's get our definitions straight. AI is in, how many people have seen a booth at RSA that didn't have the word AI in there? Anyone? No, that doesn't have, right? So what we're talking about, though, is generative AI, or GenAI, and that's large language models, kind of at the bottom here. And largely today they're text-based, but they're moving towards multimodal, which is audio and video also in the models. And so that's kind of the evolution. Now, this is really in the machine learning family, think of it that way. And at the top level, narrow AI is what we've been doing for over a decade in using machine learning algorithms and systems to drive functionality for the business. And it works. Now, with general AI, that's where the software's doing what the human mind does. operating kind of the same way as our brains. And we're not really there yet. We can do it in isolation in certain functions, but we're not really there holistically. And then the last is kind of scary. It's 2001 Space Odyssey. HAL takes over the human race, right? And it's worthy of us as practitioners today to at least be respectful and concerned about this. Because if you look at the technology adoption, the way it works in the commercial sector, functionality leads, control lags. That's kind of the nature. It's always been that way, and it's always going to be that way, I suspect. And therefore, regulations are like guardrails, but the real front line for governance, it's you. And so what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how you put a governance structure in place for your enterprise, because that really is the front line to protect us. And the other thing that James and I want to reinforce, we want you to experiment and use GenAI. Don't think of it as something you have to block and stop. It's not possible, and it will give you too much gray hair like mine. So don't bother with that. What you want to do is you want to learn about it. And that learning sometimes has some pain associated with it. You have to fail, pivot, fail again, pivot, and that's the definition of innovation. This is an innovative and, frankly, a disruptive technology. It's really exciting on the upside, and it has challenges. So let's talk a little bit more about AI governance.
That's a great point, Jim. And when I think about, I'll meet with CISOs across the nation. If I hear a CISO and I say, what are you doing about GenAI? And they say, well, we're just blocking it at the firewall. My head wants to explode. Why? Because one, you really can't block at the firewall. There's 108 or 110, 112 different CASB applications, so you can't really block it. And most importantly, as a CISO or a security leader, what's your main job? To enable the business, to be innovative. You just blocked all innovation in this company. So we're going to talk a little bit in the governance process, but what I want you to focus on is how do I enable GenAI to be used safely and putting the guardrails in place? So as we think about a governance program, there's some key components about an AI governance program. And it's incumbent on you to get in front of this. You absolutely need to get aggressive about this as a security leader. It is going to be disruptive in your organization. It can go good or it can go bad, and it really is going to be up to us to make sure we put the right guardrails in place. Well, of course, you're going to have a governance committee, although I'm not a big committee guy. Committees are somebody meet and never do anything. I really called it a workshop or a working committee or a working group. And that gives a better connotation because you're going to do stuff.
Team, right?
Yeah.
Or a team.
Oh, a team. Yeah, good idea. Good teamwork. Yeah, that's important. And one of the things you're going to do is you're going to be looking at use case development. That's going to be the primary thing you've got to get going on. Because for you to enable the business, for you to put the right guardrails in place, you've got to know what we're going to use it for, right? What is the proper use of GenAI? Then you can say, okay, I can allow that, enable this kind of activity, and I can deny this kind of activity. So those use case development is going to be extremely important, and it takes that working committee to do that. You're going to put forth principles, policies, and guidance, and Jim's going to talk through what those might look like. You're going to be looking at the ethical use and regulatory compliance, the changing laws. Of course, as you mentioned, the laws are falling right behind this, and we're seeing already some governance coming up from legislation. And of course, risk management. Our jobs, we manage risk, right? We're there in forefront defining the risks and how to do controlling compensation for those risks. Data governance. Data is absolutely important. When you look at the right side of that slide, you'll see the top one in there is data ready. So to have an AI program, one of the first things you're going to look at is, do we have the data in the format we need it in? We're going to talk through some of those things today about data governance. And then, of course, program oversight and monitoring. Be able to put the right oversight in place. That's what the working group's going to do, or the committee is going to look at. And, of course, putting the right governance things in place, we can do monitoring of how we're progressing. And when I talked about AI data ready, to have an AI ready program, you got the data ready, you got to have the security ready, and of course you have to have the governance in place. Then you will be successful in deploying AI successfully and have the right enablement for your organization. So if we think about the committee objectives, what's their purpose? We'll be developing, the primary is going to get those use cases in place, right? They're going to be looking at developing out the responsibility to get those policies in place, the governance in place. They're going to be looking at tracking the accurate business objectives. Are we doing the things we said we would do? Because one of the things you're going to talk about, we'll probably mention 8 times here if we don't mention it once, is privacy. And privacy is going to be a big issue when it comes to GenAI. Why? If you think about the core privacy laws, there's 3 features that are not the security confidential. It's use. How are we going to use the data when we collect it from the individual, right? Do we have consent to use it in the way we're going to use it? And of course, do we have the privacy in place? Do we have the right controls in place? Use, consent, and disclosure. So can I find out as a citizen where my data is being used? That's core principle, right? Well, it gets in the LLMs, it's going to be much more complicated. And our friend Val is doing a session, is it Thursday? Thursday, that you should actually go see
privacy
on privacy.
Yeah.
Along with Todd. I think Todd's sitting in the audience. I saw him somewhere. So anyway, authority, they've got to have the authority to actually implement these things, implement the policies, and put the right compliance in place to monitor that use of how are we actually using GenAI, where is it, and we educate it. Education, like always, is such an important thing. Anything in security we do, what do? We look at the controls, we put out some policies, we educate, right? And then we put the guardrails in place. We've got to do the same things when it comes to GenAI. It's just a little bit different attack surface. So then, of course, we're going to be monitoring. We're going to report out to our board and our executive team how we're progressing. Are we meeting our KPIs? And are we monitoring the progress? Because you can get drift. You get AI drift. And we'll talk more on the data governance about how you can get bias drift. It's a natural part of the actual system. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jim.
Cool. So these are some sample principles. Now, I use the word principles intentionally here because principles are actually easier to get consensus on than policies. Policies tend to be more specific and have controls embedded with them, and it's hard to get alignment on that across a diverse set of stakeholders. Principles, a little bit easier. The second reason for principles is each enterprise is different. They're not all the same, and how one enterprise uses GenAI for their strategic focus is going to be very different from another enterprise. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. Your principles state direction for the enterprise. If I work for a software company, commercial software company, I'm going to use GenAI to produce software. Why? That's the way software is going to be built. It's just the nature of the evolution of technology. Now, am I going to use GenAI for any functionality that handles customer data? Maybe, maybe not. So maybe I establish a principle that sets a direction of how we're going to use GenAI across the enterprise and getting consensus. And it's important to get consensus because consensus means the outcome, the principle, is binding. It doesn't decay. It doesn't erode when there's pressure. An individual makes a policy or a principle that could erode. And so it's important to get consensus to do that. Now, CISOs, do you have facilitation skills? Don't answer that question, it's okay. It's a rhetorical question, really. And so let's just assume that there's this side of the room, you have great facilitation skills, which means by definition that they can present something in an unbiased way because they can lead a process to create an outcome without the bias. Now this side of the room, sorry guys and women, you guys are biased and you guys are subject matter experts and you have opinions because you're really smart and talented and you want to share that opinion. Now, if you're a CISO and you're in that camp, wonderful. Don't lead the process of creating principles, policies, and governance. Support it and use your wisdom, but let the facilitators drive consensus. Consensus means all the difference in the world. So these are examples of sample principles. Next slide. These are some sample practices that can be established. And as you establish practices, you're driving policies. Now, there's a bit of a nuance I want to kind of double click on. James said earlier, use cases. He used the term use cases. What you want in your governance process is a use case intake process. So the use case, which is the business case and how you intend to use the technology, is defined and reviewed by a cross-functional team of specialized resources that include privacy, Val, include legal, include finance, include data science, include enterprise architecture. All of these functions are part of the governance model and essential to the governance model, and that's why consensus is so important across all of the different expertise and domain. So sample practices for specific use cases is easier to implement than creating a policy for the entire enterprise. When you think across the entire enterprise, you think broad and not as much detail. If you think about a specific use case, you give that use case the resources they need and the controls that are necessary for that specific use case. And doing it across use cases builds up your policy breadth over time. But it allows you to accelerate innovation. In car racing, if you look over the last 100 years of technology development in car racing, the fastest cars are the ones with the best designed brakes. So if you look historically, those are the fastest cars. Having a really sophisticated brake system allows you to go faster. So what I'm suggesting here is a governance model that allows you to apply governance to specific use cases to go faster, to enable more. We all are on this journey of learning together on how to use and harness this disruptive capability, and it's frankly exciting. We just have to do it from a cross-functional perspective, because let's talk about the finance person for a second. If I decide to use a large language model, I have to get a GPU processor that has a chip that will allow me to process that. So that's hardware that I have to acquire for that. The model itself, I looked 2 weeks ago. There's the way models charge for their services is through tokens. So for 1 million tokens, I can buy the usage of 1 million tokens for $5 for one LLM. And for another LLM, the same metric costs $120. So if you think about that across an enterprise, those numbers will add up very quickly. The decisions that get made at the use case level have huge ripple effect through how to finance the use of generative AI. And that's just finance. So that cross-functional team is absolutely essential to making this work.
You know, when we created our governance team, we first brought in marketing, legal, HR, the normal kind of corporate support folks. We were trying to develop our use cases. How do we want to use it internally to provide and drive innovation? And it was kind of stumbling. Then we brought in the data scientists. Huge difference. Bringing your subject matter expert, bringing the people that understand the business operations and flows. They will have great ideas. It opened the light up. Suddenly we understood the business cases we could do, because they both knew our technology and what we did as a company and our workflows, but they also knew how to enable with it. So important. And there's two kinds, by the way, GenAIs you're seeing out there right now. Of course, there's the public one like ChatGPT, 4, but there's also your private GenAIs, where you're actually hosting the data yourself. And I think that's where that GPU comes in you were talking about.
Yeah.
Real important there.
Exactly. Go to the next slide. Guess what? The output from an LLM is not highly predictable. And sometimes it's wrong. So what happens if you take inaccurate data and stick it in a business process that depends on accurate data? Got some problems there, right? You have to expect this as outcome. And you have to make adjustments for this, and there's capability to do filtering. As a matter of fact, there's some examples. You want me to get that? Oh, you're good. Okay. There's some examples where you can actually use multiple private LLMs to filter output from the LLM to increase and improve its accuracy. And that's what we're going to see in terms of software development in the years ahead. So be prepared. It's unpredictable in terms of the outcome. You need humans to apply judgment. There is no technology that we have available at our disposal today that applies judgment. Humans do that. They will always do that, and that's something that we have to put into it.
Yeah, so how many of you remember when the internet came out? And we did acceptable use of the internet policies, right? We started to learn about the internet, started driving. We're going to talk a little bit about responsible use of GenAI and really the legal aspects. It's going to be different, though. It's not the same thing. I mean, we already have a confidentiality policy. Why do I need another one? If you're going to stick something in public, you can't do it, right? No, this is very different. We're talking about more the ethical issues and the things we want to do as a company and how we want to support it. So here's a sample responsible AA model, and this is some of the things you're going to look at. Well, you're going to do some of the core principles that I already laid out. We're going to build in security. We're going to build in privacy by default. We're going to protect those models, because what can happen in this data is you can get data poisoning. You can actually have people inject bad data in there that would drive the wrong outcomes. So you need to protect that data from these models and make sure you got a good QA process of anything that's going over the training and how they're training. You're going to monitor that compliance. You have to keep up with the laws. We're going to talk a little bit about the EU law and Biden's law here in the US, but there's changing all the time. I think we're going to see a lot of change over the next 2 years in that area. Transparency and auditability. You're going to hear this a lot around GenAI. That's not, normally a security issue, but how are these models being built? How are the conclusions being made? Can we audit it? Can we explain it? Do we have explainability within the model? Because we're going to talk about biased. We're going to talk about fairness, because these GenAIs, they can drift and they can start becoming biased, and bias leads to ethical issues, right? So we have to look at, to control bias and fairness, you have to look at your pre-processing. Is your data inherently biased? You got to filter that out to make that, remember, AI data ready. You need to look at while you're training the models, and then you have to look at post-training. How is it drifting? And keep monitoring that drift, because it can become an issue. It inherently drifts. We're going to talk about inclusion. We talked a little bit about the members. You've got your chair, got our security folks, got our marketing, legal. Make sure you've included your business units in the development of these AI models and AI ideas and business cases. Make sure you include those SMEs. And ethical use. What are we going to say we're just not going to do? We're not going to use to model certain behaviors of our customers. That's one of our principles that we put in place. Things you're going to do just isn't ethically what you want to use. We're not going to use it to influence behavior in certain ways, because we think that's just wrong as a company. So think about what your ethical values are. And then, of course, the accountability. To be able to be accountable, because you've got that transparency coming through, and you've got compliance. You've got the authority to be compliant and monitor that compliance. And of course, you've got to look at, how is these things monitoring through? Well, we've already seen lawsuits. Around GenAI. I think we're going to continue to see them. I think we're going to have a lot of case law developed in the next few years. Most of the lawsuits currently are really around the concepts of, having a brain hiccup here, around, what's the right word, Jim?
For public?
No, compliance around, sorry, it's probably on my slide here. Plagiarism. Yeah, plagiarism cases. Sorry. Couldn't think of that word. What's wrong with me? That's probably getting older, you forget these things. So around plagiarism. But there's also already a lawsuit from a law firm against a law firm. They used AI in the defense of it, so the defendant actually went back lawsuit, so they provide inadequate defense because they used an AI to generate some of the documents. By the way, it's the lawyers, and Jim talked about using it yourself. Now, if you're going to write an abstract for an RSA presentation, what a better way to do it? Use GenAI. Has some really great uses. So when you think about now the regulation, what's going on here, first fundamentally think about what's happened. We've got this whole universe that we suddenly enabled to use GenAI, the power of GenAI. Before AI was controlled by data scientists, had very strict QA around how it was used, how it was developed. Now suddenly we've got this massive population. We've enabled everyone across the world now with extreme power because it's user friendly. And think about the risks that are driving. So we already have some regulations coming through. The EU Protection Act, it really talks about, if you read it, it's about how do I define risk? What is high risk? What is medium risk? What is low risk? Very descriptive on how that would be assigned and how to protect the EU citizens. Also, President Biden came out with a rule that says it's really around trustworthy AI. The goal when you read that, as I thought about it, it looks like really finding the balance between managing the privacy and protection of our citizens with the innovation and encouraging innovation in this area. So it's a very balanced way to look at it. There's already I like risk management frameworks. There's already some really good ones out. Some of the private ones, like some of the major accounting firms, have some really good risk frameworks. But if you're going to look at one, look at NIST 601. It's the AI risk management framework. Take a look at it. It's underdeveloped. It's out already. Take a look. It can help you put together the right framework.
So let's talk about the role of security in GenAI. Slide. So essentially, you've got this cross-functional team. You got cybersecurity as part of it, and you're building a set of policies, practices, and principles, practices, and policies, and ultimately controls that are embedded in the policies. And you want to make sure that that's targeted for their specific use cases, and then you're building a portfolio of control over the use cases to use enterprise-wide. And that's kind of the evolution. Now, there are technologies that you have in your environment today that can provide some of this. An example is your data loss prevention technology. Now, depending on which product you're using, some of them have the ability to create observability. Now, observability is absolutely essential because the evolution of regulatory requirements, specifically privacy requirements, on GenAI is still evolving, and so 2 years from now, we're going to have a different set of dynamics that we're managing to than we have today. So we want to know today, and I say we, the collective we, but certainly in cybersecurity, we want to know who's using generative AI, for what purpose, what's the concentration, and what role do they have in the enterprise, and what kind of risk is associated with that. And so all of that is manifested into observability, and it's specifically for the use of generative AI. And today it's largely the building of that capability, and that's going to increase because GenAI usage is going to be in the supply chain, the software supply chain, more than any other part of the enterprise, and we have to evolve our control capability for that. So that's kind of what the future holds. And if you don't do anything else, put observability in place today. And it's like log files, right? You don't want to feed your SIM with this, but you want an identification of who's using GenAI, in what concentration, what kind of models, for what purpose. Next.
Absolutely essential before we move on. The CISO really needs to take the lead role. And why? Because you have the broadest view across the organization. You're not just the tech side, not just IT, even though IT plays obviously a significant role, but you're working with the business every day. You're putting controls, you're putting guardrails in place. So it's absolutely essential that you as a leader get involved and help spearhead this. Because we all know if you don't get it under control quickly, it can get away from you right away.
I mentioned all of this stuff, so I think I mentioned the last slide. I do want to test one thing. James and I are following a disciplined approach here. We've decided that while we're up here on stage that we're not going to read our email. We decided. Yeah. And so far, I think we've done a pretty good job of that, right? So
I did answer a phone call just now, though.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, well, sorry about that.
All right,
you were talking. Why not?
Yeah, that makes all right. But you guys are welcome to do that anytime you want. But up here, we're maintaining that discipline, so hopefully that's working for us.
Next slide.
Third-party governance.
Okay.
So third-party governance, can I be frank with all of you?
Well,
Like,
we're friends here, right?
Yeah,
Keep it
it's in
secret.
the family, right? We suck at third-party governance as an industry, okay? And, present company included, right? And so we suck at it because it's based on this notion of doing an assessment at a point in time based on a self-attestation from a vendor that has every reason to tell you the glowing, benefits of using their product or services. And we pretend like that gives us some sort of risk management capability. It's absolutely mythic, right? It's foolish, right? Now, what does that have to do with this? Because right now, your enterprises are consuming more usage of generative AI in SaaS applications than any other part of the attack surface. So we thought that it was the public usage, but no, it's actually SaaS products, and some of them are using it responsibly, I hope, and others not so much. What do you want to know? You want to know who's using it, and you have to hold them accountable for the resiliency of that use. And so third-party governance has to expand to deal with SaaS. If you don't do anything else, just identify where a large language model is in use. And we have tools available today that can do exactly that. So you need to embed them into your third-party governance, move third-party governance into use some data science to create a risk score for every single vendor, populate that through subscription of information on a daily basis. When the risk changes, talk to the vendor and influence them, and stop trying to do annual assessments. Your auditors and regulators might love it, but it absolutely is, it's camouflage for cybersecurity risk management. So SaaS, big. What's coming next? What's after that?
Well, we're going to talk now about some of the risks of AI.
All right.
And what does that attack surface look like? So if we start looking at the risks, first one's that accuracy of output, poisoning, hallucinations. I thought only my mother-in-law had hallucinations. Turns out it's not true. You can have GenAI hallucinations.
I did that in the 70s.
We don't talk about what we did in the 70s. Data privacy and legal issues. We got bias and fairness. And of course, you can look at the OWASP top 10 threats, and that's a really good reference on some of the risk generation you've got. The other thing we've got is a shift in workforce skills. And I think, I saw last night, I don't know if you caught it, ABC ran an hour special on GenAI and some of the risks there. There's a lot of people worried about jobs going away. And when you look at the history of this thing, yeah, we're going to shift work sets. Did the internet make jobs go away? Remember, it was going to automate everything. No, we're going to see actually an increase in jobs. But what we're going to see is higher and better use jobs. But we are going to have to reskill. Some of those lesser skilled jobs are going to move up. And we got to get on board with that. So the workforce skills leveraging, and then that skills development. Now, one of the things that I've thought a lot about, I have a couple girls in college, and I thought about when I went to college. And how did I get good grades? I cheated. No, I didn't cheat.
That's why you couldn't think of plagiarism earlier.
That's plagiarism. That's why I couldn't come up with that word.
Yeah.
I was really good at doing research. I mean, that was the skill that got you the A. If you could find the answers, that was your A. Well, think about it now. A law student has all that right at their fingertips. You don't have to go dig through the law library anyway to look up case history, assuming there's no hallucinations. So I think the educators are going to have to shift. I don't know what you think, but I think they're going to have to really teach them not how to do the research, how to ask good questions. How do you ask the right question and then take that response? That's a new skill. Do you think tenured professors are going to shift their materials? Not right away. But it's like the law. Remember in math they said, oh, you can't use a calculator? Well, that makes no sense. You're going to have a calculator and a Excel spreadsheets when you get in the real world. So I think we've got to enable our students and our upcoming generations how to use GenAI. Not how to avoid it, not how to make the better paper, but I think it's going to be a new skill, and it's going to be really tough to figure that out. Now, of course, there in the bottom, existential safety to humans. Is Skynet coming? By the way, if you want to have some fun, go ask ChatGPT what it thinks about Skynet. Yeah, query it. I did. All right. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Jim.
Yeah, so we're in this kind of shifting sands of the attack surface, and if you don't remember anything else from what we're sharing with you today, it's the fact that it's changing really rapidly in terms of the attack surface. And frankly, what we thought a year ago, and me, I was telling audiences a year ago, information leakage, that's the #1 risk to generative AI. And I might have been right, a year ago, but I'm not right today. It is not the #1 risk. Next build. So the #1 risk is that the model produces output that's not accurate. That's the number, and you can call that a cybersecurity issue, or you can call it a safety issue, or functionality, or quality, or whatever, resilience. You can call it whatever you want, but that's the #1 issue. And we've got some data on, from an ML system perspective, on what the top risks are. And so I encourage you to take a look at that, but we've kind of learned that it's different. This is another thing we thought, that there'd be this massive use of public large language models with the release of ChatGPT. And you know what, we were right. Over 200 million users, that's pretty indicative. So we were right on that one. But on this one, not so much. The SaaS ingestion of large language models is happening at a furious pace today. And it's having more of an impact on the enterprise than I think you realize. So we missed this one a year ago, but it's something that we understand today. So the last shift that I can think of is the impact on the software supply chain. So I was a developer many, many years ago, and I could make the argument that I was a pretty poor developer. I think there's a lot of empirical data to support that. But nonetheless, I mean, I wrote code and I put it into production, and those are basically the two riskiest things I did from a cybersecurity standpoint. Today, developers don't really write their own code, they assemble their code. And they're assemblers. They take software components from access to the internet, and if they either license or they use open source, and they combine it together, test it, and deliver functionality that way. And God bless them. This is the way it's done today. But I don't know if you realize, if you have a GitHub account, go in and just do a search on how many LLMs are available. Right? So you got 500-600 LLMs are available in GitHub. Then go to Hugging Face. Hugging Face is a massive site of open source components for you to do lots of things, and large language models are one. And I did a search query on large language models, and it was like over 100,000. So like the access that developers have to the technology that we're trying to figure out the right governance model for across the enterprise is quickly outstripping our ability to put governance in place. But next year's RSA, this is where your biggest attack surface is going to be for large language models. It's not going to be in the public use of large language models.
So, we think about all the good that can be done. Biomedicine is going to completely change. A lot of great things can be done with generative AI, but our job is to think about the risks and some of the things that are coming up. Well, kind of the dark side. I mean, think about how well we've enabled our attackers now. Before, they had to be halfway sophisticated and be able to write these attacks. Now GenAI is providing that data. They can be smarter about their phishing. You're not going to see the grammar errors we saw in the early days of phishing attacks, right? They're going to become more and more sophisticated, and we're already seeing them. We're already seeing these really sophisticated attacks coming out. And our data leakage now extends through the prompts. You can get injection into your prompts. So there's lots of new attack surfaces that we need to look at, and putting the right controls in place, which means having the right tools to make that happen.
The good news is help is on the way. So all of you, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, are consumers of cybersecurity capabilities. And you're here at RSA to learn and discover more about cybersecurity capabilities. Well, I don't know what the percentage of cybersecurity capabilities or products today that have GenAI baked into them, but I guarantee you it'll be double or triple next year. So help is on the way. I talked to one company just a couple weeks ago, and they said that, I said, how many large language models are you using for that tool that's supposed to collect information and put it together for the SOC analysts? And they said 60. I said, 60? Wow, that's a lot. I said, why do you need that many? And his answer was, we're using LLMs to filter the output of LLMs. So it's small LLMs that we're building with some machine learning algorithms to improve the integrity of the output. And so that's what we're going to be seeing coming soon, and you're going to be consuming capability that has LLM technology to protect the enterprise. James, what about the bad guys?
Yeah, the bad guys are doing it too. They're using it. How many of you have you used Assembly? It's for Zoom, or the Zoom process that will create a transcript of your meeting. Those have used it. And if you thought about it, because we had it enabled, we started seeing it floating around because it doesn't take a license to turn it on, right? Well, think about the legal aspect of that. How many of you have had to do a discovery request and respond to a discovery request? Suddenly, all those conversations that had in Zoom are now out in your emails, now become subject to discovery. Those private conversations, maybe between two leaders about an M&A, let's say, suddenly now can be discovered. The problem with discovery is opinions get in there, right? Not facts. So you got to keep the opinions out. Yeah, that can be really, really crazy. But LLMs can also be used to protect our enterprises. Really good at behavior analysis, really good at looking at patterns and bringing different aspects together for a new view, kind of mosaic theory where you're bringing different pieces, getting a brand new view. So there is good news. I mean, there's really good things on the security side. Of course, a lot on the enterprise side, enabling the business, but also on the security side. You're already seeing products enable using GenAI to help you be more efficient and productive in your day. So, Jim, we're around the corner. We got 9 minutes left.
They may have a
They
question.
may have
or
a
two.
question.
A question
Let's conclude it here.
Yeah.
First of all, my learning for today is I will never forget the word copyright and plagiarism again, right? Brain hits you there. But AI is here to stay. It's really not going to be a fad. It's the most rapidly evolving technology we've ever seen, and it's going to have the biggest impact, even larger than e-commerce and the internet, on the way we do business and the way we flow. You stay and watch. It's our responsibility to use it responsibly, right? And for us to get in front of this thing, kind of like we tried to on the internet, we didn't do such a good job. Let's do it better this time. And when it's employed ethically and with the right guardrails in place, you can manage the risk of this thing. We need to just do common security practices. So, immediate response, look at how you're using GenAI. Establish your governance program and use the tips that Jim and I, I'm James, have done this today. Monitor the progress of how you're doing and talk about it. Talk about it with your executive team. Talk about it with your board, because they all want to know. They're reading about it. They want to know how they're going to progress and how we're going to protect the company, how we're going to manage that risk, right?
Cool.
James, any last thoughts?
Yeah, my last thought is we have at least one microphone right there.
Yeah.
For anybody that has a question. And
There's
I see
another
another
one right over there. Yep.
Armstrong's
Come on up,
pointing
ask
out.
us
So
questions.
we have two microphones. We probably have time for one question. No, actually, we have time for 10 questions, but we can't give answers.
Yeah.
Or we can do 2 or 3 questions and maybe give you an answer. So who would like to ask a question?
I think we baffled him, James.
Not likely.
No. Come on, give us a question.
This is a real smart audience. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We got a question coming here. Great. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I'm Tuping from Changi Airport Group from Singapore. I'm asking these questions about governance of AI because your title of this is about CISO in the governance of generative AI. There are certain part of the risks that you mentioned about data leaks, about security risks. I think those are quite clear, easy extension of the CISO role.
Yes.
But there are also certain part that is about the performance risk of the AI, which is, if we see this AI as just another software, then typically that will fall under the prerogative of the CIO of the or the head of the IT who take care of the performance of the IT systems.
Yeah.
And yet there's also another part of risk that is more got to do with ethics, ethical use of it. AI is just a tool. Ethical use of anything probably belongs to, in fact, I don't know which C-suite will take care of ethical usage. So how do you divide these different accountability and responsibility? And based on your talk, are you assuming that all these shall fall under the role of the CISO?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, at this rate, we're not going to get that many questions because that was a long question. But here's, I think, the essence. And thank you for asking that question.
Repeat the question in
so
summary.
How do you deal with the accountability model? And I think we need to put a little emphasis on that. Software developers, data scientists, architects build solutions. Who's accountable for the resiliency of those solutions? Them. It's not the CISO, it's not the cybersecurity team, it's them. And so the accountability model basically says if you create an ML system, you are responsible not just for the functioning of that system, you're responsible for the resilience in the use of that system as well. Cybersecurity has an accountability to produce some tools and capabilities to help you do that and to establish policies and controls. But accountability over who builds software is, and will always be with the software developer. But that accountability model has to be reinforced, and we should put more emphasis on it, so thank you for asking your question.
And that's
James.
your governance group, right? It's going to
Yes.
make sure that it's communicated, the accountability. But I think that's, again, why it's so important to have a strong governance program to say, here it's your job versus your job, and that accountability part. I think we have another question.
Not so much a question, but an observation. Taking both copyright and plagiarism one step further, every firm that creates
Do me a favor, can you look at him when you ask this question? Because it's really...
I'm looking right at the center, good sir. I'm looking right at the center. Sorry, I'm also oriented where the mic is angled because I'm talking to the man.
No worries.
My apologies.
No worries.
So, theft of intellectual property is an epidemic with generative AI the way it is today. And that's both on the companies that created it as well as the companies that had no idea that they needed to put something in place to protect their intellectual property when this thing was unleashed upon the internet. So we need a lot more work to be done on both sides of this to find ways to protect intellectual property. And that's the one thing you didn't talk about. And so I would encourage you to go past just copyright and plagiarism and take a look at IP protection.
See that woman right to your right there?
That's Valerie.
So that's Val. Talk to Val, she'll help with that. And you're exactly right.
And we're out of time.